Brown and Hart must have broke on the road trip. It must have been banging. Punctured quarter inch. I did marine weld, use a piece of metal and cut that stuck on there, and then flux seal over it. I don't, all of it, so I don't. I'm not hardly weld aluminum.
No,
If I have any questions or any questions I can't
I
answer.
think that should hold for a little bit. Sure, like bolt. I cut a square piece of metal and weld, that marine weld to the boat, so. So we get around here.
It's now 6 p.m. and the September 10th meeting of the CDA will please come to order. Sean, would you take over, please?
Wayne Clark,
Yes.
Richard Badger,
Present.
Gerald Motter,
Present.
Michael Suter,
Here.
Donald Niemer,
Here.
Alderperson Keene,
Here.
and Alderperson Weigel is not present. We do have a quorum.
We do. Thank you. First thing on the agenda is approve the minutes of the previous meeting, August 20th, 24.
Second.
Is there any corrections? If not, everybody in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Minutes stand approved. First item on the agenda, public hearing seeking for public comments and consideration of the proposed change to the CDA 5-year plan, annual plan, and administrative plan for the U.S. Department of Housing and Development HUD Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher HCV program. Patrick, you want to read the public hearing?
Sure can. Public hearing to consider the Community Development Authority of the City of West Dallas, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher, HCV program, seeking public comment and consideration of changes to the Community Development of the City of West Dallas 5-year annual and administrative plans. And it says here, the chairman of the CDA hereby will read, I read the notice. Yeah.
Skip that.
The purpose of the hearing is to afford a full opportunity for all interested parties to express their views of the proposed consideration of the Community Development Authority of the City of West Dallas, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program, seeking public comment and consideration of changes to the CDA of City of West Dallas 5-year annual and administrative plans. Following the course of this hearing, the authority will consider and vote on a resolution authorizing the CDA of the City of West Dallas to make changes to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program, annual plan, 5-year plan, and administrative plans.
Patrick, you have the floor at this time.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to turn it over to our Danielle here from our housing team, and she will highlight the changes that were derived for our voucher program.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Danielle Galida. I'm the Community Development Senior Planner for the City of West Dallas. And tonight I'm going to be reporting on the Public Housing Authority WI 201, the 2025 5-year plan, annual plan, and administrative plan. To begin the process, the mission for our PHA is to promote safe, decent, and affordable housing opportunities, and that it is free from discrimination in living environments and provide economic opportunities. In the 3 areas of the 5-year plan is that we have 3 goals, and those goals are to expand the supplies of affordable housing, improve the quality of assisted housing, and increase assisted housing choices. With each one of those goals, we have a fair housing objective that we must carry out for those 5 years, which is the macro plan. So that first goal to expand affordable housing will be to expand administrative opportunities through the PHA, through fair housing, the board itself, and through education and conciliation. Our second goal will be to administer fair housing through administration and authority and responsibility. And the third fair housing goal or objective is to fair housing and administrative enforcement. So over the next 5 years, our PHA is going to administer each of these fair housing goals each year as we go along from 2025 to 2029. So to break it down with our annual plan, we started with a macro level. We're going to go down to the year plan, which starts in 2025. Our fair housing goal is to provide incentives for affordable housing development. And what that means is that we're going to, or our plans are to partner with affordable housing developers to create tax credit and project-based voucher developments. As we know, the developments that has come through the city of West Dallas when planning our 5-year plan going from 2020 to 2024, we haven't seen an abundance of tax credit and project-based vouchers. So we plan to work with developers over the next 5 years, starting with that first year, to be able to bring those type of projects and developments to the city of West Dallas. Our second fair housing goal is to support financial literacy and education through training. And what we're going to do is provide credit and rebuilding courses through community advocates and Wisconsin Women's Business Initiative Corporation, which is WIBIC, which provide those individuals who are participants in household with the opportunity to rebuild their credit, because when coming to the program, we know that there are areas and barriers that they have to go ahead and be able to tackle to be able to be a success in the program. Our third fair housing goal for that annual plan is continual distributions of fair housing material. At this time, the city of West Dallas wants to ramp up that program of fair housing and education, and to be able, through the city's outlets, the annual fair housing contest, install artwork on public places by partnering with Milwaukee County Transit System. It's just one area that we're trying to improve our fair housing program, because as we did that evaluation in the past 5 years, we saw that this was an area that needs to grow and develop. If you see that small little area on the side, there were no comments by the Resident Advisory Board or the public which challenged any of the elements in the 5-year plan or the annual plan, which we always want that input from that RAB as well as the Resident Advisory Board, with the acronyms, and the public of what we're doing with our PHA. Moving on to the next slide, we're going to talk about our administrative plan and HOTMA. So what is the PHA administrative plan and HOTMA itself? The Public Housing Authority Administrative Plan, or the PH plan, is a comprehensive guide to each public housing agency that gives the guidelines and the policies and the procedures every day that we must go by, that our team goes by, in order when we have these households who become eligible for the program of Housing Choice Voucher Plan in Section 8. There are 2 parts of the plan which we just actually covered: the 5-year plan, which is macro level, and the annual plan, which is a year plan. Every year that we use a 5-year plan to go ahead and plan out what our PHA and what our administrative plan changes are going to be. So this is a big key, the next area that I'm going to be touching on, which is HOTMA. So what is HOTMA? It is the Housing Opportunity through the Modernization Act of 2016. Back in 2016, HUD, the Housing and for Urban Development, passed this act, which it is signed into law January 29th, and it goes into effect January 1st, 2025. So there are going to be a plethora of changes with the administrative plan that guides the administrative staff of the housing staff of what they can do each year to be able to keep families eligible and to make sure that they're eligible initially coming on the program. So the final rule was updated by HUD regulations for various program specifics to the criteria of income and assets, which are the very important key areas of the program. So updating and revising the plan, this is the first area of what we had to go ahead and create, because the City of West Dallas PHA WI 201 did not have a significant amendment plan in place. So we had to create one. And what we did is we went to other PHAs, researched, got the data of what they were actually doing to come back with our plan. And this is what our proposed policy is for our 5-year updating and revising the plan. The areas that we're going to be looking at is a change, any type of change in the material, the mission, goals, or objective, which includes rent and admission, those policies. If anything that we need to change, we come to this administrative board, which is the CDA. In addition, in our capital fund or non-emergency fund, if anything is greater than $100,000, we would have to come to that administrative board to be able to have that chance to prove the case to say yay or nay.
Million.
Million? Oh, excuse me, everyone. $1 million for any type of changes. Thank you, Patrick.
I didn't know if it was supposed to be 100,000 or a
No,
million.
it's supposed to be $1 million
Okay.
because our capital fund. So changes in regard to demolition, disposition, designation, or homeownership, capital funding, finance, anytime we have any of those changes, we would have to come to the CDA to ask for. Any other activity such as the CDA's Board of Commission will be able to determine those significant amendment factors to the 5-year plan or annual plan. So anytime there is a change requested, something has happened. Some things are out of our control. Some things are within our control. But we would have to come to that administrative board, which is the CDA, to be able to act to say, this is what we need, this is why we need it, and we needed to have a significant plan for the 5-year plan or the annual plan to come to this board and say, this is what we need as far as changes. We did not have a policy in place, so now we have one, and we are asking for the CDA to bless it on tonight. So the HOPMA, we're going to be moving to what those updates are in a condensed form. We're going to be talking about asset, consent forms, and family deductions coming up, which is going to go in implementation in January 2025. This is not something that our PHA can decide to say whether yes or no. This is something that HUD is bringing down the line to say this is going to be a change because it has been approved in 2016. So assets, what are going to be the changes? Restrictions are net assets exceeding $100,000 or real property suitable for occupancy. So what does that mean? If we have a household that has assets of over $100,000 or they have property in which they own, which they can actually live in, that means that they will become ineligible for the program. And that goes with the process of when we're finding out if they're eligible or not. So what about consent forms? What it means is that adults have to sign the form, which is a consent form, to release all of the verification or information that we go over as a staff to be able to find out if they're eligible initially or ongoing eligibility. They only have to complete this form one time. And if we have a household that have teenagers that eventually turn 18, they only have to sign that form one time. Back before this is going to go into implementation, consent forms will have to be signed each time at the interim examination as well as annual examination. So now what HUD is doing is that they only have to sign one time. That gives us that verification to go ahead and do those checks. So family deductions is very, very important. It concerns elderly and disabled households where annual deductions were $425. Before it's going to be implemented in 2025, it's going to go to $500 a month. So what that means is now that threshold is 3%. When 2025 comes in January, it's going to go to 10%. So what that means with over the next 24 months, it's not going to happen immediately. It's going to happen that first year at the interim, at the re-examination, it's going to be 7.5%. So now it's 3%. Then it's going to go to 7.5%. Then it's going to go to 10%, which is going to be that annual income of the entire household. That is something very important when we're talking about family deductions, because going from $425 to $500 annually, that's a pretty big deduction, depending on what that 10% is in that assets as far as their income. So the last 2 points are enterprise income verification system, EIV, and interim income increases. So what is EIV? Each year when we do that interim examination or a re-examination, we will use the EIV system, which is a system that shows any type of income that's coming in that household. If you are working and you don't report, that EIV is going to show us to make sure that your household is eligible. So we run that on everyone who is a participant in the household who is 18 or older. And it will show you have up to 10 days in our administrative plan to be able to let us know when you've had an increase or decrease in your income, because that's how you stay eligible on the program itself. So now what we're going to be using is the EIV system itself as a way to verify income. Prior to that, what we call paperwork. We will use check stubs the last 30 days. We would need all of that income information. We would use, if we're talking about TANF, W-2, we would need all of that information. The EIV is going to encompass all of that information, which is going to eliminate the administrative paperwork burden on our staff.
Is that EIV ran annually or just at the time of applying?
It is ran annually after reexamination. It is also ran when you are first coming on as initial eligibility. You would need to have the EIV because it's going to show us everything.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Interim income increases. So interim income, where we do an interim evaluation, it changes all the time. We have households which have stable income or which have income that constantly changes. It can change from one month to the next. So for income increase interim, we have to, as our staff, we have to go ahead and check that. So what the changes are going to be with HOTMA is that interim income increases for earned income will not be conducted. So if it's an increase, we're going to do it at that reexamination period. If it's a decrease, we have to do an interim evaluation, because if your rent is or your income is going down for the program, we have to meet that qualification to make sure that we're meeting you where you are. If it goes up, then it'll be during that interim, then that reexamination process. So that also eliminates that paperwork burden, which is going to be staff is dealing with. Do we have any questions? I covered a lot of information tonight. Go ahead.
Thank you. At the top of your presentation, you mentioned the Resident Advisory Board.
Mm-hmm.
Who's on that board and what authority does it have?
So there are a total of 7 members. We have 2 that are individuals that are kind of stand-ins. We need 7 individuals for a quorum, I believe. Is it 7 altogether, Steve? So the individuals on that board are going to be those individuals who are actually on the HCV program. So these are all households who are participants of the HCV program. So what that happens is that when we go through, before we come to the CDA board, the annual plan or 5-year plan or any administrative changes in our PHA plan, we need that buy-in and that education from that resident advisory board to be able to say, are there any comments, or this is something that we challenge, for us to be able as a team of the, prior to us coming to the CDA, to be able to make those decisions. These are the people who this program is going to affect. So we need to be able to hear from them and have their buy-in and their input to be able to make sure that this program is running smoothly and through compliance.
Is there a board in place today?
It is.
Is it
All
doing anything?
positions are filled.
Who appoints that board?
The board is appointed, so the process that we actually go through is that we ask those individuals within the program, do they want to be a participant? It is completely voluntary. There is no official budget or anything that we do. They said that they want to be part of this. They come, we let them know when we're having a meeting. They have buy-in if they have an experience they want to tell us about, or how this is going to affect them, or what their ideas are. So it's completely voluntarily, and it is all members are household members of the HCV program.
We've had it for a few years. Every change that has come through has to go through that committee.
Mr. Chair, can you go to the first slide?
Excuse me. Yeah, thank you, Sean. Go back. If you go to the first slide.
Gotcha.
The first slide, that's the same one. Okay.
Maybe it's the second one. With affordable housing development tech. Can you describe what that means to partner with housing developers to create tax credits?
Sure. So when we have developers that come to the table for economic development, if they're saying they're going to build a new apartment building, living complex within the city of West Dallas, let's back up a little bit. When we're talking about tax credits, each developer has to fill out an application through WIDA. And each year, WIDA evaluates those applications, and then they'll make an award towards the end of the year. Is it the fourth quarter within the year?
Well, the policy, it used to be spring, like March or May. The applications due around the December,
So,
January. But it's not applied by, it's not a city program, it's a state program through the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority.
So if the developer wants a tax credit, it has to apply through WIDA?
Yes.
So not every developer has
No.
to apply through WIDA?
If they're applying,
And what does the tax credit do?
if we were looking at various projects in the city, like for example, Longfellow School, that was a project that the developer was utilizing historical tax credits and applied to WIDA for tax credits to bring equity into the structure, the sources and uses, the budget of the project, and then they have to guarantee certain units are at certain income levels to create affordable housing.
Gotcha, thank you.
It's a program we've used at Beloit Road Senior Housing, a project, Heritage. I think there's multiple different senior developments in our city that have used the Section 42 program out of the WIDA tax credit program.
Thank you. Could you go to the slide that has the capital program threshold? So this is the additions to the capital fund or non-emergency. So there's currently a capital fund that exists?
That is, we don't have a capital fund. That's more for public housing. Capital funds are set up to replace housing, and we don't have that. That's just probably put in your, it's put through the HOTMA updates. It's one of those ones you have to adopt.
So if we had a
Add a
fund,
public housing complex, like,
Okay.
and then we would have to have a reserve account for the property.
and then if we had such a fund, is that the required threshold, $1 million, or is that the staff recommended threshold?
That's the federal recommended threshold.
Recommended or required? So in other words,
It's required.
It's required under HOTMA, which is a federal act.
and maybe what I thought I heard, maybe I didn't hear quite right. So I thought when we talked about this $1 million fund, the fund would be set up, there'd be $1 million in there, and that would require no authority to use the $1 million. Any use of the fund under $1 million would not require any authority by the CDA. Is that the way I
Correct.
understood it? In that $1 million threshold, that's a required?
We can get further detail on that, but yes,
Or is that a recommendation? It seems very high to me.
right. But for big public housing agencies,
Maybe for
it's
somebody
probably
else.
not that big, yeah.
Right.
For our size, it doesn't correlate, but would be large. I mean, we receive around $3 million a year in voucher money, just as a correlation. So
But that doesn't go
third.
to we don't currently have a
Yeah,
capital.
it's-
fund.
Right.
Okay. And then could you go to the slide that has the asset restriction for participation? That one there. So it says the restrictions for assets exceeding 100,000. Is that the requirement of HOTMA?
It is. This is
It's not
what's
a
going to be,
discretionary?
everything that I covered in these last two slides, assets, consent forms, family deductions, EIV, or if we're talking about, this is going to be implemented. Every PHA that is receiving federal funding have to have this in their administrative plan. So what this means is that if we have a household that applies for the Housing Choice Voucher Program, Section 8, and we go through, we do income and assets, this is what I tell households. If you want to be on a federal entitlement program and you're looking for them to pay for something, they're gonna get into all of your business. And I'm using vernacular here. So if you have assets that are over $100,000, when we look at your entire portfolio to say that you have over $100,000, you will not be eligible.
Yeah, no, I kind of understand I was just curious whether the $100,000 was a requirement or, again, a recommendation.
It is required.
Is it the required minimum?
Correct.
So could our policy be lower than that number?
We can't change any of these federal rules.
Thank you.
I see where you're going.
Well, piggybacking on that, what is the divestment window? So if I have 100,000 in assets and I want to get on the program, do I have 6 months to divest, 1 year to divest, 1 week to divest?
Well, that goes a little bit into when our actual eligibility and open enrollment is open. Because when you're talking about a PHA and when people apply for it, that means that it is open enrollment. If you get on that wait list and you get pulled off and we go ahead and go through all your assets and you're not eligible, you will have to apply again when it is open enrollment. It is not a guarantee that your household will be picked. It is a lottery system. So let's say they divest in 2 years and they get on the lottery list. They apply and they get pulled in that lottery. Our staff has no control over who gets pulled into that lottery to keep it equitable. But if they divest within 2 years, 6 months, when we do that income, we run it again, then they don't, it's gone. We don't have to basically worry about it. So that is the threshold. And it does seem pretty high.
At the time of their application is, I believe, a 6-month look back.
Okay. And then with the LIHTC, you guys are showing disabled and elderly, but it's low income as well included in this conversation, right?
The whole voucher program is based on income.
All right, any other questions?
Well, one last
Go ahead.
question.
Go ahead.
Is there a percentage of low-income housing that we're looking at for the city of West Allis? Is it 3%, 5%, 10%, like overall in the new developments that are happening?
We do not have an affordability requirement for any of the new developments.
Okay.
We would be open to those considerations on projects if they make sense. But as the CDA, where when we've looked at market rate developments, we've had gaps. So if we do affordable units, we'd have to either replace income or subsidize it with some other federal program, such as a tax credit scenario, or historical tax credits, or other funding sources to be able to round the capital stack on those projects with the developer. And we may have future discussions on those. We would like to see more, people are using workforce housing and affordable housing in
Well, I'm not suggesting that there's more. I'm just asking
No,
if
but
there's
it's a valid point. We'd like to see more. No, but we're also very fortunate right now with the way that the market rate developments that have been coming in as well. So a blend of that in some nature, some inclusive style might be a scenario that's worth exploring if it makes sense. Or it's a market rate, but there's some affordable units in it. Those are all considerations.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go to item B. Any interested party attendants may now express their views on proposed Community Development Authority of the City of West Allis, U.S. Department of Housing Urban Development HUD Section 8 Housing Choice Vouchers HCV program seeking public comment and consideration to change the Community Development Authority of the City of West Allis 5-year annual administrative plan. Here, please raise your hand and be recognized. Upon being recognized, state your name, your address, and your interest in this proposal. You may proceed with your statement. If you are here on behalf of an interested party, please state the name of the party you represent. Does anyone wish to speak at this time? Seeing no one wants to speak at this time, I declare this hearing closed. We'll move on to item number 3. Resolution approved amendment for Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher 5-year plan, annual plan, and administrative plan charged to operation year 2025.
I move approval.
Second.
Been moved approval and second. Any further discussion? If not, everybody in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Ayes have it. Resolution passes. Item 4, discussion regarding the development agreement between the 6 Points East LLC and consideration related to public parking. Patrick?
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Backwards. Go forward.
I can use this.
I don't know, whatever I did. The CDA received a communication from the 6 Points East Condo Association, went to a few elected officials as well, relative to a parking lot that's located behind the 6 Points East condo. You can see it in this picture. It goes back to 2006 when there was a public parking lot there at this site. And then the parking lot got incorporated into the whole development of the site. We have not responded to that email yet. We are still internally discussing this. I wanted to bring it to the CDA. The development agreement states that there must be 32 public parking spaces in this area. And that those parking spaces are then available to the commercial tenants, the 6 Points East, and public parking. The development agreement states that it's up to the authority about overnight parking. The communication that came from the 6 Points East Condo Association is asking for, they said they would consider the lot public parking. They're asking to reserve 12 spaces along the building for the 6 Points East Condo Association. Again, there'd be no over parking, but they want the exclusive right to enforce that and permit that. They want post signage for proper use of the lot, which under state law they can do, in accordance then also with the development agreement, and the CDA to grant authority over the permitting process for the lot. And last, a waiver for insurance and liability, which what we have on other lots that are like this, we do not provide that waiver of liability. This is a public parking lot, just like any strip center, anything like that, or other retail development where you needed public parking for the commercial space. It's just, in this case, the condo association pays for the maintenance of this parking lot. Whereas the 6 Points, like by the farmer's market recently, when we developed that, we required that there be public parking for the farmer's market. The developer has to pay to maintain and enforce that parking lot. Summit Place, we have 2 parking lots in that area. Summit Place maintains those parking lots and takes on all liability, et cetera, associated with those. So as staff, we're recommending no changes to the existing development agreement with the 32 public parking spaces. I think through signage and enforcement, we can maintain the goals of what the 6 Point East Association is looking for, but we cannot provide the waiver of insurance, et cetera. And the state law provides them the enforceability of issues with the parking lot. There has been past issues with the parking lot. I'm going to be honest, it's kind of our own police department. Is it private? Is it public?
Who's meant to enforce overnight parking there?
Right, that is the question. And the police department said, well, it's not like their highest priority, but they will go through there and enforce it the way we want. That came from Chief Mitchell. But it's not like they're going to devote somebody going there each day
Right.
to do that.
And nor would I.
And we don't do that on all other lots. So.
Right.
But as a staff, our recommendation is no changes.
So if they do park overnight, do they have to get a city pass or a parking?
So and right now, we don't allow any overnight parking, but people
That's-
have been parking there.
Looks like the recommendation
They
is
would
change.
like to have the ability to enforce. And if the CDA is receptive to that, we can work on that particular issue. We have a development agreement that goes back, and everything was capitalized into that development agreement back in 2006. And how things got enforced through time, it's not, you gotta look at what happened when we did the original development agreement. The area needed public parking.
Yeah,
and the building needed public parking.
Maybe I
meet
just don't
its code.
understand. So under number 5, you say the city will recommend to the CDA that overnight parking be permitted. So that's gonna be a recommendation. My question is, do we get revenue from that overnight
No.
parking? They wouldn't have to,
But we would not, they would,
no,
it's
so,
not a public parking lot where we would collect overnight parking.
okay, then,
If they want
We
to
enforce-
permit it for the Six Points East condo,
Exactly right.
a building to park it, and they can enforce it, and they maintain it.
I agree. If they want to park overnight, fine, but if the permits aren't coming through us, the enforcement should definitely not come through us. Whether it's public, someone parking from the public, someone parking from the apartment complex. To the point, there's already an agreement in, the land was sold for $1, pretty good deal. So, I mean, I would be in favor if they want to post the proper signs to state that, you know, only residents may park and this is resident parking here,
At
and
night,
they can
yeah.
determine who they can properly tow or not at their expense.
I think we can
Then
work
have
with
at
them on that, and the thing is that what hours, right? So I don't know who the tenants will ultimately be in that 6 point, if it's 10 o'clock or midnight.
Well, how do they know that, right? Who's the
Right now, our
tenant?
hours in the downtown are I think it's 3 AM to 6 AM. You can't park without a permit in our downtown parking lot, so we can work with them on that enforcement.
So is the draft letter that you put together the position you'd like us to take?
Yes.
Support you with?
I mean, I'm open to discussion, but that was what as staff, we recommended.
Well, I'd move approval.
There's no action, it was just like a
There's no action.
direction.
Yeah, if they wanna put up the proper legal signs and enforce it at their cost, then
yeah, I would say, my feedback would be number 5, if we're recommending that overnight parking's allowed, that they have to get a permit through the city of West Allis, like anyone else who wants to park overnight.
That would be all right too, I guess.
problem that I think with them obtaining the permit then is parking enforcement's already an issue throughout the city. And,
And it's a private property.
right, so it's kind of like a foggy line, and I think we'll have more residents calling saying, there's a car parked there that doesn't have a permit, and nothing happening, and it being more of, well, the police don't do anything about it. And it's just because there's 2 parking enforcement agencies for the whole entire city, 2. So that's why I would kind of prefer it's somewhat private, that they deal with how to determine what vehicles can remain at night and what ones shouldn't.
So what would say, just follow the agenda that you had put out here? Is everybody satisfied with that? We don't have to vote on it or nothing, but just to give them some recommendation on where to go. Is that fine with you, Patrick?
Yes.
Fine with everybody here? Thank you.
I hope to have the response out this week, so.
All right. Okay, we have item, let's see, 5 and 6.
For closed
We're gonna
session.
hold for closed session. And we're gonna go to,
Right before closed session, Mr. Chair, I know the representative from the
Right.
property owner would like to speak.
right,
But can we finish item 7?
we'll do 7 and then
And
we'll
then-
give them a chance to speak.
Correct.
Okay, item 7, consideration relative report on redevelopment initiative. Patrick, you have the floor.
We did a recent tour on the status of the Three Leaf Project on 85th and National. The mayor, Carson, myself, and they are almost 2 months ahead of schedule. The dry weather has been very helpful. Ironically, the day before it rained when we were there, but it's moving along. It's interesting, the windows are actually from Lithuania. That was something that was surprising. They actually come in versus out. American windows, they said go out, and European windows come in. I haven't been to Europe to actually analyze that, but
you're right.
it was kind of a interesting discussion. But when they're building this quickly. They assemble the outer walls up on the upper floors, and then they flip it out, and then they install it. So it's kind of quick in how they're doing it, and I think they're planning to be under roof here by late October. So things are progressing on that project, just as an update. Beloit Road Senior Housing Complex. As I mentioned before, at some point, we'd like to figure out how to sell this property. I had attended a meeting at the property with some concerned tenants. They submitted a communication. We addressed a lot of their particular issues. One was they wanted a new TV in the community center before the start of the Packer season. There are a couple buildings that need new roofs, but I wanted to just, where does that money come from? That's been an issue. If you look at the numbers here, there's a replacement reserve on the property. As of 8/31, we have like $39,000. It's around $42,000 to do a roof at Beloit Road. And then we have an operating reserve balance. And our costs have been really impacted by the last winter, that icy snow. We had a big issue there that cost us a lot of money with the contracting of snow removal. You can see there was a large disbursement here for extra payment relative to that. We also have had, just extra costs associated with insurance and cash flow issues. So we had to pull from operating reserve. But the current balance is $225. Our ability to sell the property is in 2027. So as the revenues are tight, our costs have gone. Insurance, I think, went up 20% on the property, and this is a national trend. It's not just Beloit Road; it's everybody. If you own apartment complexes, and they're seeing it on their other operator. So we'd like to replace a few roofs, and we've made a request to our tax credit investor, Boston Financial. You have to ask for the money from the operating reserve, and we're making that request so that we can get a few roofs done. But we have leaks and issues with the roofs there that we need to address, and I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Our goal is 3 roofs if possible, but you can see the costs. It's just, other than putting a tarp up there, I don't know what to do on the Beloit Road. So I wanted to bring, on Highway 100, it's listed as an area. We did get some inquiries about this property. I believe it's 2367. And it was a parts store for many years, and we had a doggy daycare interested in buying the property. There are some environmental issues here. It was a gas station. You would never have known it. So, how do we get this into the different position? It can continue to lease, maybe at some lower end uses, but as the city and CDA have expressed, what can we do to improve the corridor, et cetera? So we may look to use some of our EPA funds here to do the complete assessment, if the owner's willing, to figure out if the tanks are still there, et cetera. There is record of 3 tanks. And the doggy daycare that was ready to move here went through Plan Commission, invested plans and drawings, backed out because of the environmental concern, and taking that over and getting bank financing. So you'd be surprised at some of the legacy costs that are still at various sites, and most people driving by would never recognize that was a mobile gas station at one point. Sean?
Land by label update. This is the 4-acre site in the southeast corner of 70th and Washington Street. As you recall, Land by Label is a development firm that has an accepted offer to purchase the property. Just a brief update on it, that things are on track for a fall closing on the property. They're looking at hoping for mid-October. If you recall, the funding sources are TIF, EPA, and DNR. A combination of those to assist to get the property to cash flow with the development proposal. The developer is currently working on just finalizing the financing, and there are 2 30-day notices associated with the EPA and the DNR funds. The EPA notice is out, and the DNR notice will go out shortly. Once that's complete, that'll set up the closing. You can see up here, development guarantee. We always want to be sure that the developer is good to be able to guarantee the project, so we go through a third-party confirmation process in regards to that, but they would hope to start construction then shortly after closing. They're actually in for their building permits right now. Their stormwater's been approved. by the DNR.
I think the building permit is estimated at over $200,000 on the project, so.
So it's about a $73 million project, 248 market rate residential units. So be excited to see that continue to move forward.
Item 5.
All right, sir, before we go into closed session, we'll give you a chance to speak.
I appreciate it. I do it from here, or
You can stand right up and,
stand up?
that's fine.
Okay. I just wanted to make some comments
Kale on the phone.
on the property at 92nd, the St. Aloysius Church and that school. Cardinal Capital
Okay, I
Management.
have you on the phone.
Well, my name is Eric Schwenker, and I'm the president of Cardinal Capital Management. Our offices are 901 South 70th, so we're a West Dallas business. We've been that way for 10 years. We've done a couple of things here in the area. When those houses you were just talking about were rehab, 15 years ago, that was done by our group. Another situation would be Highland Commons, when the church was, when you had a disastrous situation over there for many years. WIDA asked us to come in, tear down the church, reset everything, and bring in something that was better for the neighborhood. But they were still inside the supportive housing mode, so that project over there has been ours for long years. We don't own projects like that. It was done on behalf of Milwaukee Center for Independence, but we built it and managed it. In this situation, in 92nd and Greenfield, the first thing I want to make sure you know is we had correspondence, my business partner, Dan O'Connell, had correspondence with Ivan Gamboa last week in terms of the mortgage renewal. They reached an understanding that if we paid down the mortgage, that we would pay down the mortgage from $750,000 to $600,000, and it would be extended to December 25th of this year. I've reviewed their correspondence, that's what it all says. I got a note from Dan O'Connell to sign the mortgage and to provide the checks that were required this morning. I called over to Tri-City. I got the lady I got on the phone told me that, oh yes, she was ready, she was preparing the document. I said I'd be happy to come over and sign it and bring the checks. She said there's no need to do that. I'll come over and bring you, I'll collect the checks from you. I'll be at your office in an hour or so, and I'll have you the document to sign, and then therefore the deal is done. And that deal is that, again, that we were at $750 as a debt when the week started. We were then at $600, they already took the money, and we were extended to December 25th. So I had witnesses to that. A number of my employees are listening to this conversation. I had meetings. She didn't come over. We looked for her at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. She didn't return the calls. So I went over at 3 o'clock with the documents, signed the draft documents, gave the money, and left it with Debbie to give to, I think her name was Jessica. Any event, what I'm trying to tell you is that we had a deal for specific terms, specific extension. We put money out. And so when we're hearing that mortgage is being bought, we're not sure what mortgage is being bought. The mortgage that we agreed to with Tri-City, or was something else differently done. And so as a practice, I mean, this is always a good group, and West Dallas is a very fine town, so so these things are hard to talk about. But I think there's been interference somehow in the deal, because the conversation that we had with Gamboa and Connell, not myself, but he's my partner, seemed very clear even when the day started. So I don't know what else has been going on. But you can see that that negatively affects us. If we have the extension in place and we paid for it to the tune of $150,000, I'm not sure what it is that you're buying. I guess that's one thing. So I thought I should tell you that. And I'm not sure whether the liability on that is the bank's or yours or whatever. I really don't know. Second thing is, because we don't get to attend these meetings, and I realized that we had this price thing of what would you sell the property, and I had given a number. The number was just our pure costs in the deal. That's the real cost in the deal, and nothing else. There was no profit number or anything like that put into it, and it was $1.5 million. Those were a real cost. But I thought I would just remind people how that could have happened. because we do a lot in Milwaukee County, and particularly we do a lot, and I don't want to hesitate to bring up the terms. We do a lot of market rate stuff. If you wanted to see one of our better projects, you could go to Middleton Market in Middleton, Wisconsin. You would see 263 units with an 18,000 square foot market hall, which is going to be completely filled with restaurants and everything, and another 12,000 square feet of commercial space. Built that. We actually are very quite capable, and we do very good projects. We have a long history of helping on the supportive housing in this city. Building for the deaf, blind in Greenfield, building for the blind over on Holly Ridge, building for the vets on 35th Street, that kind of stuff. So Milwaukee County looks to us for some stuff. In the case of 92nd in Greenfield, Milwaukee County was the party that asked us to get involved originally. And the reason they asked us to get involved is because they wanted to make an investment in some housing in that corner. They thought that a lot of housing could be created, but there was a fight going on, and if you know St. Al's, some of you may know St. Al's, the parish was in a bitter fight with the bishop. The bishop had been somebody who had helped Milwaukee County in terms of special needs housing and homeless housing. They asked me, with the knowledge of West Dallas officials, would you intervene and try to get this done? That site should be freed up. West Dallas wanted it freed up so that it could be taxable. And we said we'd get in there. So we spent several months negotiating that. The pastor here never did like the bishop. He didn't like it when it was all over. But his price, his firm price, was $950,000. And they were not going to sell. They wanted to go with another group. And in the interest of everybody, we agreed to pay that $950,000 to meet the needs as the county had expressed it, and as Village of West Dallas wanted to do it, and everything else. We thought we'd get moving pretty quickly on it. The county thought at that point in time that they could put $1 million towards it through 8 home funds for 8 folks, out of what seemed like it'd be 150 or 160. As always, the attitudes of the village or the city are always going to differ in circumstances. At that time, there was no interest in having home fund money in the building. You know, you can debate it back and forth, but the desire was not to have people in the building who have lower income because it might lower the taxable value of the property ultimately. So there's nothing we could do about that, and those are things that go on in any community, and people have attitudes about it. So we weren't able to use those funds to move immediately ahead. We realized that there might be some funds to tear down the buildings, and I think at that point that wasn't also readily available, but we've been working with the architecture, with AG. We have probably done plans back and forth for 2 years. We went back and forth. We're going to do townhomes and everything else. I think as of last spring, we had agreed on 148 units, but we're still debating the amenities on the roof and stuff like that. So it's not like we haven't been paying attention to doing this. I've had 2 different people negotiating this stuff here, Anish Rastogi, John Peckin, just trying to reach agreements on tips and other stuff like that. Again, it's not an easy thing. I understand that unless you have all the plans and so forth here, what can we do or not do, but it's not because we haven't been trying to move along. You should know, too, that I had a chance, since it didn't seem like we would ever find money to tear the buildings down. I had explained to West Dallas representatives that I was making progress with a PACE product. And what about PACE is important is that we're using this now on 16th and National. We're using PACE as a source of secondary financing. And PACE can do upwards of 30% of the capital stack. And the proposal that we got from PACE, which has also got, they get involved in doing the building envelope and in the mechanical, so it hits the highest percentages, higher than any standards in terms of energy efficiency. But what's important about PACE was that it was non-recourse. It was like almost 30% of the capital stack. It was in the low 7s, and that's what we're using on Chavez, and that's what we're hoping to use in a bunch of places here. So I think I informed everybody not too long ago that we thought in doing that, we might be able to figure out a way to get this done without even getting money from the city to tear down the buildings. So we weren't trying to avoid any of those kinds of topics. And of course, with the rates being what they were, we didn't anticipate that anybody was doing, we didn't see anybody doing very much in May or June or July. We're all looking forward to the rate reduction. So from our point of view, We're working this thing with pace, it can get it to 80%, it makes the equity not as tough to do. And frankly, if we can just get the normal kind of tax, credit, TIF that you do, I think that pretty much gets us there. The only real thing we have to do is get an agreement on what we're allowed to build, and I don't know that I thought that that was us that was holding it up in the back and forth of all of that stuff. So, we've been ready, we're very much a quality builder. We're working through the financials of the time, and what'll happen with PACE is we'll probably be able to show people that we know ways to do this stuff better and cheaper for the cities. What we think PACE allows us to do is make less of an ask of the city than anybody else would ever make. So that we think is a pretty good thing. So anyway, I just want to make sure you know that stuff. We've also had these issues with the building itself in terms of security. I wish my main guy, Ned Chris Geiger, was here. We have been over 50, 60 incidents, I would say. We have brought every known thing to mankind in terms of how to tighten that building, and we've done it all. The one thing that we asked for that never happened is we asked police to arrest people who were trespassing. And until this last week, I don't know, except for one instance in the middle of all the last 2 years, this last week was the first time I saw those arrests really happen. So I'm guaranteeing you that if people will arrest people, you don't have to have 50 or 60 incidents. But the police department, not the police department, was determined not to arrest people. They just simply sat outside, putting our guys in dangerous situations over and over again as you go into those buildings. We've had massive bolt cutters cut. This was a thing for just a local group of people. In my opinion, as long as you arrest people, you will see it come to an end, and fortunately that started this past week. So I'm asking you to consider on the mortgage thing, which mortgage are you buying? And is it really okay to buy something and that somehow the terms of the mortgage have been changed in a manner that we had agreed to and already paid for in terms of $150,000? If you buy it in that stance and we have our December 25th stuff, then I guess you bought a mortgage, that's fine. But I would hope that it would not be that a mortgage different from what was already negotiated with Tri-City. And then secondly, I hope that we can get some respect for a long history of quality building and quality housing. Plenty of things that we can show you all over the place, including if you wanted, I think you'd see in Middleton, we're doing a project much more expensive than the one we're talking about it, and I know Middleton people are pretty happy with it.
Mr. Chair,
All right, that's all.
I just wanted to make a comment. I'm the alderwoman for the district.
Okay.
So, just a couple of items, like, I understand the financing, and that's not what I'm gonna get into, is, you're right, 50 and 60 calls is a waste of resources, by our police department. And arrests aren't happening because not all the people can be found, or they're not gonna drop what they're doing for the kids that are smoking behind the bushes and starting fires. We've had to call neighborhood services, myself and the other alderwoman, numerous times to remind for grass to be cut, for bushes to be trimmed. And it's not even being, like, I feel like voluntarily maintained. I shouldn't have to call to remind that the grass needs to be under, a certain amount of inches, or that a board has been broken into. So it's been a very blighted property for over 2 years, giving neighbors headaches. Luckily that fencing was put out, kids were doing burnouts in there. There's been a recent dumpster fire, you're right, this week. There was an ambulance, a fire truck, 3 police cars. I can't count how many times driving home I see a police vehicle in that parking lot. So it would be one thing if we're working on getting financing and the property was being somewhat maintained, but to me it seems like the property is sitting there until you guys get financing, and to me it just seemed like with everything that was just stated, there was a lot of ifs. If this happens, then this happens, and if this happens, then this happens. So I just wanted to state, like, off of your comments, some of that feedback there.
Well, I think you know Chris Geiger. Okay, so I'm just gonna say, I think Chris Geiger comes across as a pretty fine individual.
Yep, not questioning his character.
Right.
What I'm questioning is the amount of calls that I receive as the alderwoman
No,
for
I'm
trouble
sure.
happening there. And again, some of the proactiveness that you guys could have maintained for 2 years that hasn't been.
Stop this.
Well, I appreciate what your comments are. I'll need to say that I know that Chris felt that he has done,
Sir?
okay?
No, we give you a chance to speak, and I think you hit all your high points, and we'll take those into consideration. But
That's fine.
that's your time.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And then we'll have to, you can notice to go into closed
Yeah.
session. We'll go into closed
I
session.
gotta get it right here. Okay, next item. For agendas, items 5, 6, the committee convened in closed session pertinent to provisions section 19.885/1/E of the state statutes for the purpose of delivering and investing public funds whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. This committee may convene in open sessions after completion of the closed session to consider the balance of the agenda. Can we have a motion to go into closed session, please?
Second.
You take roll call, please, Sean.
Wayne Clark,
Yes.
Richard Badger,
Present.
Gerald Mater,
Yes.
Michael Suter. Yes. Donald Niemer,
Yes.
Alderperson Keen.
Yep.
Okay, we are now in closed session.
Okay, Ben, we're ready to go on air.
Okay.
We're on.
All right. Item 5, resolution to approve the purchase of Tri-City Bank note for the property located at 1405 South 92nd Street.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Move for second. And any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Resolution passes. 6 is nothing.
Right.
Adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.